What is censorship? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is censorship? Well, the definition of a censor is a person who is authorized to review materials, films, books, any other materials prior to public dissemination, and they are authorized to suppress or remove what they consider to be objectionable material, objectionable on the grounds of morality, politics, or other undefined metrics. There's also a version of that for the military and for national security that's authorized to remove or suppress materials that the state finds to be of national security concerns. And there's a third version of it, which a censor is a part of our own subconscious, which automatically suppresses or removes information from reaching our conscious portion of our brain. So off the bat, it's important to understand that censorship is a part of reality. Because it's rooted in our subconscious, and because our own brains are already acting as a censor and doing censorship for us, it's obviously going to always be propagated in human society because it's a built-in feature of the human brain, or of the human mind rather. So when we begin looking into what censorship is, and we understand that every human brain comes programmed in with a censor, we can be relieved of the frustration of trying to eliminate all censorship everywhere on the planet off the bat, because it turns out that that would be not in harmony with how we are constituted as human beings, right? Like an example, there are certain things that we know do need to be censored. Otherwise, you would turn on your TV and there would be a torture channel, right? We don't want a torture channel. I think probably like 95% of Earth can agree that we don't want a torture channel. We don't want a child pornography channel, right? On public TV. We don't want a snuff film channel on public TV. Like, the list goes on and on and on of things that are obvious and that actually do require, the list is obvious of things that clearly require censorship, and not for political reasons. Those are just for psychological reasons. And psychological meaning information and thoughts that affect our behavior. And because we know that humans have mirror neurons, we are monkey see, monkey do. So when we see things in public or we hear things in public, there's a part of us, no matter how educated or uneducated we are, that feels like that we want to do that, or that we're authorized to do that, or that that's an acceptable thing. Even if it's a terribly immoral thing, the human body is not registering morality when it absorbs information. It just goes, oh, that's a thing that humans do, or that's a thing that happens, or that's a thing, right? And then as it goes through our system up into our brain, that's where our personal censorships and value systems and ethics and morals kick in, and then we have, our actions, right? But there are things that clearly don't need to be publicly disseminated, universally speaking. And it's not a denial that they exist, and it's not a suppression of the fact that they exist or that the concepts exist. But some of them are clearly not fit for public, right? So in that sense, there is legitimate censorship of things, like even rating systems for entertainment products in the world, whether it's movies or music or whatever, when they give you hey, this is appropriate for these ages, they're trying to give you a decent rating on where that information should be absorbed relative to the psychological development of the demographic that's going to view it, right? Okay. And throughout history, it's been going on. The Romans, it was an official, being a censor was an official position in the Roman Empire, where they would not only take the census, but they would monitor materials for moral and psychological well-being of the society. Now, obviously, anytime humans have a sociological unit, whether it's a tribe or a whole nation, the information flow and the access to the information that flows within the sociological unit becomes of the utmost importance to the governance and the health of that society and how it is shaped, formed, and continues to operate in the world. And it's no secret to the leaders. From the beginning of time, they know that the information given to the group determines how the group acts to a large degree. So, of course, having the ability to determine which information gets out to the sociological unit becomes one of the most powerful mechanisms for the leadership. And when we examine human history, there have obviously been just innumerable sets of leadership that have used the ability to censor and censorship to advance their personal agendas, oftentimes to the detriment of the population that they're leading. And that ranges from small cults to big governments. That's the nice thing about philosophy, is that we're identifying the principles here, and the principles can be scaled up or down. That's not the determining factor. The principles, you could have 5 people in the room that you're using censorship for whatever reason, or you could have 5 billion that you're using censorship for whatever reason, and the principles remain the same. So we've seen that censorship has certainly been abused when it comes to sociological units throughout human history. In dissecting that, the leadership usually gets away with it by constructing, they either don't tell the public they're doing it, which is the easiest way because then nobody's alerted to it and it's clandestine, and how would you know what you're not getting if nobody tells you? And then the other way they do it is to tell you that it's for your own good and they're taking care of things and they're just keeping you from seeing stuff that would be damaging to you, which is convenient because it's not a lie, because they assuredly are keeping some things from you that would be damaging, but then they're also keeping you a bunch of things that would keep you from making up your own free mind. And usually what happens is that when leadership starts to get out of balance, because there is a good balance with censorship, there is a good balance. Like, it is a healthy part of the human consciousness to suppress some information for some of the time. It's not all the time. Like, in terms of the horrible, grotesque crimes and immoral activities that humankind commits, ranging from, homicide to genocide to, all the awful stuff. It's appropriate to view those materials in appropriate contexts and settings, and to find out about them in appropriate contexts and settings. Like, if you have a hardcore news site, they need to be able to report on atrocities, but they need to figure out a way to do it in a way that's not damaging to the demographic, but still get the point across, right? And courts, like, you can't censor courts, because courts need to be able to deal with the raw, true information of events. But the dissemination of potentially psychologically damaging and things that would promote immorality, and in a deep level, like, hey, it's okay to murder people, right? Or like, it's okay to commit breaking and enterings into people's homes and murder them and leave, right? Like, imagine if a state was saying, like, promoting that, like pure dark anarchy, right? You could say, okay, well, it's fine to censor that. So there is a balance. Now the problem is when you get into areas where the society is being withheld information that they need to be healthy, or information that the leadership is using just to maintain control and power of their position, then it starts to go into censorship, starts to go into hand in hand with propaganda, because now they're omitting information that could allow their sociological unit to have proper context of the situation, to typically ensure their own seats of power. And that typically, when censorship comes up in the modern age, that's what comes to mind for people, is people in seats of power who have personal agendas using their ability to censor the information flow to benefit themselves by keeping themselves in power, by enriching themselves, by keeping the population ignorant. And any attempts to thwart those information dams by the public are met with prosecution and then persecution. And it is one of the foremost issues of the modern age, because if we look through human history, up until the advent of the internet, information is exceptionally easy to control. I mean, you always have word of mouth, but there was no democratization of information that even comes close to rivaling what the internet has provided in the last, 30 to 40 years. Now the entire globe has a digital infrastructure for information flow that is guaranteed to outpace the censorship rate. And as we were discussing earlier, pros and cons to that. In the overall analysis, it's better to have information available, even if it's objectionable to people, than to not. Because for all of the atrocities and the horrible stuff and all of the really terrible ideas of things that can obviously be censored, you'd also be missing out on things that can get you enlightened, or things that can get you out of a sticky situation with corrupt leadership in your area of life. And it's very easy for powerful organizations to conflate the two so that you don't know what's going on, but you think it's for your own good. And that's really kind of where the balance of things are continually in human history. And the story of humankind and its self-governance, that's always one of the major issues. When you look into any area of history, if you examine the government and their censorship policies, and then you use that to analyze how the society was run, you get a much fuller picture of what's going on. So at this point in time, it's never been more important, because information's never flowed globally as fast as it does now and as freely as it does now. And of course, we're seeing the reactions and the balancing of that free flow of information vis-a-vis the censorship battles. And a lot of it's just coming to light, and a lot of people already know what's going on. And so it's really interesting philosophically to see all of this stuff, to see it go down. And then to look through the pages of history and go, oh, well, this totalitarian government did this back in the day, or this communist government did this back in the day, a socialist government did this back in the day, a monarchistic government did this back in the day. This is what a free government did back in the day. This is like what this group did back in the day. This is what this religious organization did back in the day. I mean, it's not just governments, it's everybody. Anybody that's in a leadership position who has control of information, even down to just a regular office memo. I guarantee, I've been in offices where when people know, oh, that guy sent out a memo, oh yeah, well, he's a tool, he's a company man, he's not addressing the real complaints of the organization of this unit here, because we know that he's just spokesperson for, you know, the company, and that he would never say anything truthful or real to us that would actually address any of the problems that we're undergoing. So, right? And that typically leads to bad management, because they're self-censoring, and they're censoring on behalf of the company, and they're not addressing the real needs of the population they're leading. And people are smart. People know when they're getting the wool pulled over their eyes, as being treated in an infantile manner, or being withheld information like that shouldn't be. You know, in that office example, that's not, there's no atrocity they're withholding or whatever. They're just withholding what they seem to be like uncomfortable information for the way they're trying to make things happen. They're trying to make a reality happen, and there's information in there that is making so they can't make their version of the reality happen, right? You don't know what that boss is telling his boss, and what he got in his quarterly counseling report from him, and you know, you got to make more growth and this and that and da-da-da-da. And so he thinks, oh yeah, you know what, I'm just going to ignore all the things I don't like and pretend like it's like this. And then when he sends out that email that's tone deaf to everybody, everybody's like, what is this guy talking about? And it's because he's doing self-censorship, because he thinks it's going to attain a goal. But then the stress on the organization everybody can feel is because you start to get out of touch with reality. And the reason you got out of touch with reality is because of the censorship. And it was improperly censored. Like I said, some censorship's all right. Like if you want to say that 5-year-olds shouldn't listen to Andrew Dice Clay, you know, curse and be vulgar and, you know, be misogynistic, even though I might find it hilarious as, you know, a 48-year-old. Yeah, maybe a 5-year-old shouldn't listen to it. It's probably true, you know? Or, you know, maybe you shouldn't let an 8-year-old watch Faces of Death. You know, it's probably true. I think we can get on board with that. But if you're a 20-year-old Army guy and you need to deal with your own mortality and you're about to go in a war zone, yeah, maybe you should watch some Faces of Death to orient yourself with the reality that you've chosen to go into, right? So it's a really fluid situation, and the problem is that when leadership has the ability to censor, and they can do it in a clandestine manner, there is a tendency throughout human history, and the history books bear this out, that they'll censor in a manner which divorces themselves from reality if it's a reality they don't like. If they can choose a reality which they can control, then they're going to do that, even though it's at odds with the actual truth of the matter. And typically in the history books, when we look, authoritarian regimes, totalitarian regimes, and you know, that includes monarchies and communism and socialism and da-da-da-da-da, any one that ends up in like a totalitarian state, typically when we dissect them, they've fallen in love with their censorship abilities, and they've created a false reality, and we can call it politically correct or woke or whatever. There's always a different name for it in a different era. But when they have done it long enough to a large enough percentage of the population they're leading, they've created a false reality, and then they make everybody have to live in the false reality. And when they do that, they can control the situation. And anyone that's actually trying to tell them the truth, or saying like, hey, you're living in a false reality that you concocted through this censorship, those people are labeled heretics. And it's on brand for people inside the world of censorship. Anybody on the outside of the world of censorship is like, no, that guy's a heretic, that woman's a heretic. Like they don't believe the one true reality, which is the only great fascism. The only great fascism is that there's one reality and you have to live in it, and guess who controls it? Us. There's infinite realities. There's infinite perceptions and realities on Earth. You don't even have to leave the planet to realize that. So for anybody to just go, oh, well, there's only one way to view this, and it happens to be this way, and I happen to be in charge of it, that's a dead giveaway that they're lying to you, because it's simply not true. It's actually one of the most false things you could actually tell anybody, or even infer. Like, there's only one way, and I'm it, right? Like, and it's political and da-da-da-da, and, you know, and we have the means to make you live like this. You have to, it's coercive. Like when people are lying and being coercive, and they have the ability to censor you, when we take those factors and we analyze historical power structures, you're going to see for yourself that those are devious. Like those are not coming from a good place. When people have the power to coerce you, and they have the ability to control your information flow, and then they have power over you, I mean, that's a nasty trap to be in. And the history book's full of those situations. And censorship is one of the very key levers that they can pull to do it, and it's never been more important in the modern era to be aware of it, as I think all of you are. I mean, here we are on the internet dispersing information freely, and typically people, they don't get too upset about it until it affects them personally. And typically what happens is an injustice will occur to them, and they will try to use their public voice, and then they'll find out for the first time that they actually don't have a public voice, and then that's when they basically go on a personal crusade for it. But if you're in a country where you can think freely, or if you're in a state of mind, more importantly, it doesn't matter what country you're in, if you're in a state of mind where you can think freely and universally about this before you become a victim of it, then you'll be better prepared, and you'll know how to, flow around it. And really, like, one of the best things that you can do is just think universally about these things and fly above it. And when the events happen that happen, you'll be well prepared, and you can deal with them as they come. But yeah, so censorship, what is censorship? That's what it is. It's humans leading other humans and determining what they can see and not see, and it is a natural part of us, and it's a thing that if we use it properly and judiciously, it can be a really good part of society. As long as it doesn't abolish the informations, as long as it's used as sort of a pull filter, which governments typically, they can't resist the power. They can't resist the power grab. Who can, right? But yeah, that's what it is. So anyway, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found it helpful. And as always, have fun.